So when we talk about gender inequality at work, it's so much more than just a single pay gap or a promotion that didn't happen. It's actually a whole system, a machine, really, with all these interconnected parts that just keep it running. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the blueprint of that machine to really understand how it works.
And the map we're going to be using for this comes from a really important 2015 paper by Kalins Tomarski and Leanne Sawing-Hing. They came up with this model that looks at gender inequality not as just, a bunch of random, isolated events, but as a self-reinforcing system, like a cycle that's baked right into the very structure of a company.
Okay, so to really get a sense of the real-world impact here, the paper brings up this huge U.S. study. And get this, even after you control for everything, like education, years of experience, the exact job you're doing, women were still paid 22% less than men. That's a huge gap, and it's one you just can't explain away by saying it's all about individual choices.
And believe me, the pay gap, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. The paper lays out this clear pattern of negative outcomes that creates this massive ripple effect, touching pretty much every part of a woman's career, and even her well-being.
Yeah, you can really think of it like a set of dominoes. That wage gap, it leads to lower socioeconomic status. You see fewer women in leadership, which means there are fewer role models, and that slows down career advancement for others. And just the day-to-day stress of dealing with all this, it takes a very real toll, impacting both your mental and physical health.
Okay, so the big question is, how does this all actually happen in the day-to-day life of a company? Well, the researchers take us right into the engine room of the organization, its human resources practices.
And this is a really critical point the paper makes. See, discrimination isn't just one single thing. On one side, you've got what they call institutional discrimination. This is bias that's literally written into the rules of the company. Think performance metrics that might penalize parents who can't work late. But on the other side, you have personal discrimination, and that's all about the biased decisions made by individual managers. And the key thing is they feed into each other.
This is just a perfect example of personal discrimination in action. There's this amazing study where researchers sent science professors the exact same application for a lab manager job. The only difference was the name. One was a man's name, one was a woman's. The results? It's pretty stark. The male applicant was seen as more competent, and he was offered a higher starting salary and more mentoring. Same resume, totally different outcome, all because of that unconscious bias.
All right, so if biased decisions from actual people are a big part of the problem, what's going on in their heads? What's the psychology behind it? Well, the paper argues that the sexism that drives all this isn't always the loud, in-your-face kind you might imagine.
So the paper breaks it down into two types. First, you have hostile sexism. This is the one we all recognize, right? It's openly negative, the belief that women are incompetent or a threat. But then there's benevolent sexism. And this one is tricky because it sounds nice. It's this view of women as these wonderful, pure creatures who need to be protected, but it's just as damaging because it ends up trapping them in traditional, less powerful roles.
I mean, here's a textbook example of hostile sexism, and it's pulled right from a huge discrimination lawsuit. It's blunt, it's clear, and it acts like a gatekeeper, just straight up denying women access to power.
And then you have this. This is the really insidious nature of benevolent sexism. The supervisor here might honestly think they're being nice, protecting a pregnant employee from a stressful job. But look at the outcome. It's exactly the same as hostile sexism. A career gets stalled, an opportunity is lost, and it's all wrapped up in the disguise of caring.
Okay, so let's pull back and look at the big picture. We've seen the individual biases. We've seen the HR stuff. So how do all these pieces lock together to create an entire company-wide system that just keeps reinforcing inequality?
You really have to think of it like a feedback loop. When all the leaders are men, what message does that send about who the company really values? When jobs get unofficially split into male roles and female roles, it just limits everyone's potential. And here's a big one. When a company's culture is always talking about being a meritocracy but completely ignores its own biases, it just makes the inequality invisible. Every single piece makes the other pieces stronger.
And this is how the system keeps itself going year after year. The paper calls it a process of socialization. Basically, sexist organizations tend to attract more sexist people. They hire them because, hey, they're a good culture fit. And what happens to the people who don't fit that mold, the ones who are less sexist? Well, they're way more likely to leave. So over time, the organization just becomes this big echo chamber for its own biases.
Now, I know this can all sound pretty bleak, right? But the really cool thing about seeing inequality as a system is that it shows you all the different places where you can step in and actually make a change. So the researchers lay out this really clear three-pronged attack. First, you have to go in and fix the biased policies themselves. Second, you have to standardize how decisions are made to get rid of all those gray areas where bias loves to hide. And third, you have to directly address the sexism of the actual people making the big calls.
And we're not talking about vague ideas here. We're talking about very concrete actions. It means creating formal, written policies for things like flexible work, so it's not just up to a manager's whim. It means using objective, specific metrics for performance reviews, not just gut feelings. It means holding managers accountable for their decisions. And this is so important, it means training people to spot the damage of that sneaky, benevolent sexism, not just the obvious hostile kind.
And really, this brings us to the most important takeaway of all. Understanding this whole system isn't just some academic thing, it's a map. It gives each of us the power to look at our own workplaces and ask, okay, where can I make a difference? Is it in a policy I can help rewrite? A hiring decision I can make more fair and objective? Or is it the culture I can help build, one conversation at a time? The real question is, what part of this system can you influence?